Hello everyone, it's Brian here with a video I'm going to call One Random Record. I had been thinking about previous random record videos I had done, and if you were watching way back then, you may remember that I used that style where I'd back up against the records and just pull 5 records without looking and then spend a minute or two talking about each record. Of course, I didn't invent that, as you well know. The other style was where I used the Discogs app or website to click on the random item generator and talk about the first 5 records, which meant I had to pause the video so I could get them off the shelf and then come back and then say whatever I had to say about them, which I thought was very interesting. Those both worked in a way, but I only really spoke about each record for a minute or two, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to do a longer form of that using a random record. So what I thought I would do, and this may be a series or it may be a one-off video, I thought I would use the random item link in Discogs to choose one record, and rather than starting to talk about it immediately, I would take some time. So that meant I could listen to the record if I wanted to. It means that I could go online and look it up to see, what did people think about it. I could do all those sorts of things that I wouldn't do in the other random records thing. So the commitments are then that I will choose the very first record that I click on, even if it's a record I hate, even if it's a record that I've played too often and spoke about too much, even if it's a record I've never heard before, because I do have some that I've never heard. So those are the parameters. But before I get into it, I wanted to also say one other thing, and that is that I'm hoping some of these records may remind me of experiences of record shopping, of places I bought it, of where I went, and this particular one absolutely does, so that's good. So on that note, let me just say as a preface, and this is something I've said in other videos, is that I was raised in small town southern Ontario, so the important thing there is that the town I'm from didn't have a record store for much of my youth. No record store. We didn't have a movie theater. We had subpar restaurants. We had nothing to do. Now, a record store did open later, and I certainly went to it, but it was, I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was the kind of store where you would be fine if you're looking for the latest ABBA record, or if you wanted to find the latest record from the Cars. Absolutely, they would have it, or the Knack, or something like that. But if you wanted something a little more esoteric, you wouldn't likely, and I can't guarantee this, but I don't think they had, Bauhaus and Joy Division. I could be wrong on that. Eventually that store closed down, and another store opened a short time after in a different location, but I don't know much about that because I had moved by then. So that is sort of my background, which meant that if I needed a record, or if I wanted a record, I had very few avenues open to me. One is that I could travel with my sister as a passenger in the car because she had a driver's license. She would go to a larger town near us and go to the local mall or malls, whichever one she chose. And there was always 1 or 2 record stores. And so I'd go to the record stores, I would look around, I'd spend my money, and then I'd wait for her as she tried on clothing, and then we'd drive home. Occasionally I would give her money and say, go to the record store and buy me this record. And I remember telling her to get me the Police Regatta de Blanc, which she did, and I got my change back and I was delighted. In other cases, I would go with my mother, who liked to go to Zellers or Kmart. She'd go there and I don't know what she was buying. I guess I just waited around while she bought a blouse or something, but they often had a rack of records. Now, nothing extraordinary, but I remember when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, I bought Elton John's Greatest Hits Volume 1, possibly Volume 2 later on, I don't know. And they often had a cafeteria where you could get delightful things like a hot beef sandwich, which is not so good to think about. So that was my experience getting records. Now, that's all in advance of saying that when I got my driver's license, absolutely everything changed because I could then drive to these places. Now, I had to deal with arranging to borrow the car from my parents, which wasn't always the easiest thing, but I would drive to various places, and I learned very quickly that there was one store about 40 to 45 minutes away that was fantastic. It just sort of appealed to me because they had a good inventory, and it wasn't like your typical mall record store. It was more of it had used records as well as new records, and they had something I'd never seen in person before, and that was bootleg records. So I would go in there and just be stunned by this album art that I'd never seen before. But of course, I've never seen this record before. And in the early days, I remember being a little bit confused because, it might seem obvious now, but back then, it was difficult to know sometimes what was an official versus unofficial release, because even in stores that had legitimate inventory, sometimes you'd find a record from an artist that you had just never seen before. And it's like, oh, where did this come from? So you didn't always know what an artist had released because we didn't have Discogs, we didn't have AllMusic. So it was sometimes a surprise. This store was even more so because they had records that I only ever saw them in that store. So that's all to say that the first record that came up when I clicked random item was a bootleg, the first bootleg record I ever owned, and it is Bruce Springsteen, Cincinnati, 78. So this is what I bought one day, and I bought it, first of all, well, the real reason I bought it is because you may know that back in that time period, Bruce Springsteen didn't release live material. He wanted you to come to his concert. He wanted you to experience 4 hours of Bruce Springsteen on stage. That's what he wanted, and that's why he didn't release live material, or so I have read. Now, for me, that was just not possible because Springsteen never played anywhere near me. I couldn't easily get to Toronto. My parents would never have allowed me to take the car to Toronto. I didn't know anyone who came here. So I thought, this is perfect. I get to hear Bruce Springsteen playing live. I get to hear the crowd cheering him on. I get to hear the between song banter. I get to hear Bruce Springsteen live. Now, obviously not 4 hours, but I get to hear Springsteen live. So I bought this, and I think I paid 3 or 4, maybe 5 times the price I would have paid for a regular record. So let's talk about this record. I don't envision this as a review, and I'll just talk about the record, I guess. So first of all, it only has, and this is a feature of a lot of bootlegs, they're kind of impermanent in a way. This is just an insert which has a photocopy of an image from Darkness on the Edge of Town, because this is the Darkness on the Edge of Town tour. Has the track listings there, nothing on the back. The record is packaged in this white generic sleeve with nothing on the spine. On the back it says in Roman numerals 84 series number 32. And then there's this statement which says colored vinyl. Only 100 numbered copies. I have number 72. Now, when I read that, even then I was saying, does that mean there's 100 copies in total and they're all numbered, or 100 copies that are numbered but an additional number that are unnumbered? I don't really know. So it could be that there's 100 of these. But having said that, this particular concert has been released numerous times with different titles like Piece de Resistance, Lip Sync in Cincinnati, 78 I think was the first one. So inside we have 2 records in white sleeves. First one is on blue vinyl. It doesn't say record 1 or record 2, just a side 1 and side 2 on both. But GLC, Great Live Concerts, 1981, produced by Clarence White. So there are versions of this concert that were in fact pressed in 1978. This is from 1981. And the second record is on purple vinyl, different color label. So that's what I bought. And I was thrilled. And the first thing I did is I went to my friend's place, whose name was Bruce, conveniently. Now, Bruce had what I thought was a really impressive stereo. I don't remember the amp or receiver he had, but he did have a pair of Bose 301s, which at the time I thought were magnificent. I've since changed my opinion, but I was pretty impressed with them. The other odd thing he had was a Sony linear tracking turntable. I don't remember the brand name, but I think it was Sony. It did have a light that shone on the platter. Now, the purpose of that is that if it detected that there was no record on the platter, it wouldn't play, so the stylus wouldn't come down on the mat. But it shone right through here and wouldn't play them. I guess it didn't detect that this was colored vinyl, so it refused to play them. So I had to go home and listen to it on my turntable. And my first opinion was, this sucks. I was really disappointed. I wanted to hear a great Springsteen concert. I wanted to hear everything like you would hear on a studio recording, but live. And this is not what it is. So this is, I guess, a characteristic of a lot of bootleg recordings. The quality is not great, and I was supremely disappointed. I thought I had wasted whatever the money was on that record. Now, weirdly, I did go on to buy several other Springsteen bootlegs, I guess always hoping for the best, but this was a disappointment. Now, having said that, I listened to it again yesterday, and I thought, this is a lot better than I thought it was. Now, maybe in the years intervening, I just sort of thought this was terrible. And no one listening to this today would think that this is a well-recorded record, because it's not. It's probably on a cassette tape somewhere. But it's better than I remember. So let's see what's on here. By the way, the catalog number is ACR61. You can look that up on Discogs. So, as I say, the Darkness on the Edge of Town tour. So naturally, there are quite a few songs from Darkness. So we have Badlands and Streets of Fire. Then Independence Day, which of course appears later on the river. Then we have Promised Land from Darkness. We have Racing in the Streets, starting side 2 from Darkness. We have Thunder Road from Born to Run, and Meeting Across the River. And that side wraps up with Because the Night, the song he originally gave to Patti Smith. Side C starts with Kitty's Back from The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. Then we have Not Fade Away and She's the One, kind of performed together, the cover version plus She's the One from Born to Run. And then Backstreets on side D, which includes segments of what would become Drive All Night, or already were Drive All Night, and then Rosalita from The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. So a really solid set list, to be sure. It just doesn't sound that great. Now, one thing that is fantastic about this record is you do get to hear some Springsteen comments. So when he introduces the band, it's always very exciting. And when he introduces Clarence Clemens, he calls him the man of, what does he call him? The man of steel. Is that right? No, King of the World, Master of the Universe, able to leap tall refineries in a single bound. That's always very entertaining. So you do get that. But generally speaking, the sound quality is not that great. And I was absolutely disappointed in that aspect. Having said all that, there's one undeniable fact about this record, and that is that it convinced me that I needed to see Bruce Springsteen live. So years later, 1985, Bruce was playing in Toronto as part of the Born in the USA tour, and my friend and I decided that we should go see him. So he managed to convince his dad to lend him his car. So all we needed were tickets. So we went to the record store downtown, the new record store that replaced the old one, and walked in and said, "Hey, we like Bruce Springsteen tickets." And he said, "Sorry, I'm sold out." And like really dejected. And he said, "But I will sell you my personal pair." And he pulled a pair of tickets out of his pocket. Clearly, he was doing this to everybody. He doubled the price. We paid $50 each instead of $25. And I was really concerned about paying $50. I mean, at the time, that was an extraordinary amount of money. But it turned out well. Although we were as far back in the stadium as you could get, there was only like 2 rows behind us, and the drive there and back was interesting, to say the least. Getting out of Toronto was interesting, but I'm glad I went. It was actually really interesting. Now, I don't know if there's a better version of this concert somewhere. I don't know if he's released it in a series, because I do think it's fans do regard this tour as being a classic Bruce tour, so I would like to hear a better version of it if possible. But yeah, it's pretty good, but disappointing at the same time. Anyway, that is Random Record number 1. Maybe there are more to come. We'll see. Thanks for watching.